Okay, here's the deal. I think there's actually a lot to come in Dragonflight, even though, yes, we've defeated Phyrek, Yggdrasil has bloomed into the world, and essentially it's a big old happy time of peace. Albeit, obviously, with our new, lovely, blessed mother and Eridikron looming over the horizon. Here's the deal, though. Blizzard have confirmed that this expansion has got 3 more patches in it, and with what they've done, I think our new A-plot is clear. It's characters like Tyr, like Odin, and quite a few other things. This could really go places, such as our sponsor. The LG Ultra Gear 27-inch 1440p 240Hz monitor. Yes, there are now 240Hz OLEDs, and that is as good as it sounds, with amazing buttery smoothness, and of course, being 1440p and 27-inch, I believe that is pretty much the ideal place for both immersive and competitive gaming, and being 1440p, it's actually possible to drive it at that higher frame rate in the sorts of titles where you can realistically get a super high frame rate, like your big shooters and stuff like that. It's an absolutely killer monitor, and you can learn more at that link down below. Today we're dealing with the implications of the newly released Tyr questline. It's essentially the final part of the Tyr chain, at least so we thought, because now he is reforged. First though, rapid fire catch up. Here is Tyr. He was doing work for Odin, his boss, way back in the Dragon Isles back in the day. He's responsible for uplifting the dragon aspects, a move that Odin basically hated so hard that he rage quit on everybody. Then he got locked away in the Halls of Valor because he was such a dick to Helya that she was in the mood for revenge, which meant that whenever Loken wanted to basically take some power for himself, Loken was able to work with Helya, and that put Odin out of the picture. Loken then took up the mantle of Prime Designate. Now the thing is, Yogg-Saron, the old god deep within Ulduar, had been messing around with Loken's head. There's more story here. It involves Thorim, it involves frost giants, love, but the fast version of it is basically what I'm doing now. So, Loken then kicks everyone out of Ulduar after he makes his move against Odin. Then Tyr, Archdeus, and the others basically get suspicious. What the hell is Loken up to? And this is where a scene in Dragonflight comes in. You may remember in the very first Tyr quest we get this flashback where Tyr gave the aspects a silver scale. Now, basically that scale would activate when the time was right. We see this little vision of him bidding them farewell. After that, he meets up with his mates. They steal the discs of Norgannon, which are basically a Titan-crafted black box, like the black box in an airplane. They kind of record all of the world's history automatically. And they wanted that so they could basically uncover Loken's treachery, or at least find out what the hell was going on. Loken, of course, didn't want his treachery to be uncovered, so he summoned these Cathraxi to stop Tyr and his mates. Of course, this is all old god magic gobbledygook, so yeah, at this stage, Loken is basically totally far gone. Now, it's at this point that Tyr basically gives his life to stop them, and he's able to buy time for the others in his party to go and do their thing. And of course, we get a vision of this in the 10.1 questline where we met Travard again. Now, the last time we met Travard, we were helping the Legion Paladins retrieve Tyr's hammer. Anyway, Travard leads the Tyr's Guard. They're an organization dedicated to upholding his virtues, and the whole lore around Tyr, the Vrykul, who are like in the early Tyr's Guard, and early humanity. It's really incredible. It's so cool, but it's just not the topic of today's video. Anyhow, that quest ends with a moment that contains much of the plot of our story. Yeah, Tyr goes out pretty damn well. Okay, Tyr's allies eventually hid the discs within Uldaman, and way back in the day when we went to Uldaman, that's the sort of thing that we ran into, even ran into some of his friends. Anyway, cut to the modern day. At the start of Dragonflight, Alexstrasza thinks that she needs to get, this disc that is in Uldaman in order to restore their power, because she thinks they're going to need their power restored. So, she sends us all to Uldaman. We go there in the pre-patch, and of course, at the very end of Uldaman, Legacy of Tyr, it's the full dungeon's name, we go to fight Chrono Lord Deus. Here's the deal though, he has the disc, and he tosses it into a time portal, meaning we do go home empty-handed. So, we don't have the disc, but, of course, we do find, at the end of the level up campaign, that the silver scale activates, this gift that Tyr gave to the aspects. We then basically proceed to do a bunch of questing, see a bunch of visions, and we forge and rebuild Tyr's body. but it's just that, his body. Now later on we go and try to recover more of his memories in the second chapter of the story, which is when we meet Travard and we witness Tyr's end, in that cinematic of course I played a little bit ago. Now shortly after defeating Chronoloord Deus, once and for all in the Dawn of the Infinite, because yes, we kill him twice in this, later on then our characters try to recover more of Tyr's memories, and that's what sends us, well, to meet Travard, which is really cool, and also where we go and we essentially witness Tyr's end through his own eyes. It's a really, really cool questline. Anyway, after that, the whole Dawn of the Infinite patch happens, so basically shortly after we defeat Chronoloord Deus once and for all in Dawn of the Infinite, we reconvene with Travard, and we decide to train up his fellow Tyrsguard. It's a really cool questline, the Knights of the Silver Hand get involved, a whole bunch of people, it's really cool. Now we discover that the disc containing Tyr's memories is with Grand Magistrix Elisond, of course, in the Nighthold in the past. Now, she is the leader of the Nightborn Elves who we saw back in Legion, and at this point in the past, she wanted to get information from the disc. So, beacons were planted. Okay, a plan was made to do the heist, but then Farak makes his move on Emirdrasil. So, a few raid nights later, Farak is dead, and while yes, Eridikron and Xalatath are at large, the immediate threat to the Dragon Isles and to Azeroth is essentially over. So, we, along with the Tyrsguard, decide it's time to do the heist. We go to the Nighthold, we even stop by with Runas, of course, before he turns into a Withered, which is a kind of nice little touching moment, before we confront Elisond. And this is where it all gets rather curious, because each time we try to defeat her, she uses time bullshit to, well, get undefeated. But sensing that Elisond is truly motivated, right, by actually trying to help her people, because if you think about the history of the Nightborn, they really did get a pretty shitty deal. So, sensing that Elisond is basically legit, Valune, one of the Tyrsguard champions, pleads with her, and rather surprisingly, Elisond says this.
So be it. I have gleaned the knowledge I need to depart this time way and keep Suramar safe. The disc is yours.
So basically, right, Deus threw it into the past. Elisond then learned knowledge from it, returned to her people, and I suppose then the rest of Legion happens. You could also say that maybe this is another Grand Magistrix Elisond. I wouldn't go that far. You gotta remember the Nightwell is powered by the Eye of Aman'Thul, which is this artifact from Aman'Thul. Now, Aman'Thul is the big time titan, so that means if Elisond basically found an interesting trinket in some sort of time way, her trying to get that, right, to serve her own ends, that would kind of make sense. Anyway, it was cool to have her back, and of course, she's played by Jennifer Hale, so yeah, you just met Femshep. Anyway, Elisond is a cool character, and all the way back in Legion during her encounter, there's voice lines from her that really do imply that she knows quite a lot that's going to be relevant to the future. I almost wonder if this is Blizzard revealing a little bit of how she kind of came to know that. Anyhow, we return from our heist, discs in hand. This time, whenever we try to get Tyr going, it's successful. Oh, Chromie, you just had to ruin the mood, didn't you? Anyway, Tyr is back and basically everybody's happy. Tyr is a super likable character, and even though he may have, you know, kind of accidentally created a Galakrond, he was kind of doing it on his boss's orders, and yeah, he was involved in all that Titan-y stuff that we've now realized as we've talked to Viranoth, you know, maybe it wasn't all that good. But the thing is, even though he was serving, right, his purpose as being border from the Titans, whatever, the thing that people at the time liked about Tyr is that he did actually seem to genuinely care about those around him, and he would, you know, he would go to bat for them, and ultimately, when push came to shove, he was the one to kind of do the noble sacrifice. So, Tyr, yep, he certainly has his perspective in the world, but also, he's a pretty good dude. And of course, for the dragon aspects, this is a really big moment because Tyr basically played a major role in their essentially coming of age, right? Whenever they kind of ascended to the next stage of their lives. Anyhow, after reconnecting, Tyr and Travard go to check out the Tyrsguard base. And here's where time gets a bit wacky. And not in a strange way, just that the last time Tyr was awake, it was many tens of thousands of years ago. He does recognize trolls, yes, but he doesn't recognize humans, and he's wondering where all the Vrykul are. Yeah, he was out for a long time. If you're not aware, as was established at the very start of Wrath of the Lich King in the questing experience for the Howling Fjord, humans essentially are a sort of devolved form of Vrykul. It's all pretty cool lore, but anyway, it's for another time. So technically that's the end of our quest, but our characters have some extra dialogue. Now Talithus totally acts like a WoW player because he goes in and he basically says, hey Tyr, what's next? I want to know what's next. Tyr basically says to him that he needs his mind to be in order before he intrudes into our world. This is logical. Talithus is, like us though, a little bit disappointed at the lack of a this changes everything lore drop moment. I'm not worried though, and actually what Talithus says is rather relevant because you look at his quest text and he mentions Quel'Thalas, Northrend, and the Broken Shore. Now, World of Warcraft, the War Within is our next expansion, but after that, we have Quel'Thalas, and after that, we have The Last Titan, which is set in Northrend. So, two of the places that he basically speaks of as being trouble zones, or places where things are going on that we need to deal with, well, two of those are two future expansions. And as for the Broken Shore, I'm not exactly sure what's wrong that's going on there, but there is a pretty major looming question for me, and that is the Tomb of Sargeras. One of the coolest moments in the Tomb of Sargeras raid is when you realize, hang on a second, this Night Elf temple is built on a massive Titan facility. Remember that moment you go through the door, you meet Maiden, you fight her, and then you go down to the chamber where the fallen avatar is. From an art perspective, a sheer scale perspective, I think it's one of the more awesome moments in a WoW raid. Now, Chris Metzen, when he was talking about The Last Titan, he basically said, hey, what are all those big Titan machines for? Good question. Maybe this points to the Broken Isles somehow being relevant again. And obviously, we were just in the Broken Isles in this questline because we went back in time to Suramar. Quite interesting. Now, other characters speak of being impressed at what Travart has been able to pull together. And yeah, these Tyr's Guard group are pretty damn cool. And the way this is written just makes me think that Paladins will be playable by more races. And this is Blizzard basically putting in the lore to make it work. We've got a troll priest, Nalaki, reflecting on how her and Valune are. They're basically in a way following the light, but via two very different religions. You know, a Draenei and a Prime Naru, a troll and the Loa. Right? But working together, they formed a strong bond, and she muses on what they can learn from each other, which basically makes me think, at the very least, troll paladins will be a thing. Okay, we can then speak to Tyr. This is not final because there is one more scene with Tyr after this I've got to talk about. But anyway, we speak with Tyr. On the topic of the Black Empire, he says that he expects more battles because that's kind of just the way that things go. And yeah, that means he's probably watched BlizzCon as well. On the topic of the Titans, it gets interesting because he says this: the Titans are beings of unfathomable wisdom. They empowered we keepers to fight chaos. As a result, they are responsible for much of the good that exists. But even as a keeper, I was not privy to their end goal, nor can I yet fathom it. I serve them always, but I fear I cannot tell you much more than you already know. And to many people, they think, does this pass muster? Is he telling the truth? Here's the deal. In Edicts from the Prime Designate, which is a collection of essentially orders from Odin that we find in Uldaman, this is one of the things that he says. Third, do not share knowledge of the first ones. Mortals could not conceive of the wonders the Makers granted to the Titans in Zereth Ordis. Thus, learning of the progenitors would only confuse them. It is enough that mortals know the Titans brought order to the cosmos and that they are owed deference. While some among you would prefer to argue these points further, such debate can no longer be tolerated. I remind you that I speak with the authority of the Titans, and any further dissent may cause me to question whether you have succumbed to outside influences. Remember, life is chaos, it must be controlled. Yeah, Odin. Now that last line, life is chaos, I've had a video in the works about that for ages actually. It should be out decently soon. TLDR, Draenor's deep past, which is what led to the orcs existing, is really cool. So subscribe for that, and members on bellular.ghost.io, I shall probably post the script for your perusal in a few days. Okay, so clearly Odin knows of Zereth Ordos, he knows about the first ones and all of that stuff. And it's also clear the other keepers know, because this document was literally Odin's orders to everybody else. It also tells us that there was quite a lot of dissent going on, and thinking about Odin and Tyr as characters, and I suppose as individuals, what they kind of valued, thought, and their actions, I do think that Odin and Tyr would probably be the type to clash. Anyway, point is, Tyr absolutely knows about Zereth Ordis, he absolutely knows about the first ones, unless it is the case that he was specifically left out and never got those edicts. kind of hard to tell, but at the end of the day, you do ask Tyr about the Titans, and on that topic, he basically says, yeah, I don't know what they're going to do. And when he says he can't tell you much more than you already know, then I wonder, does he already know that we've been to Shadowlands and all the natural implications for that? Overall then, I don't think it's any sort of lore, mistake, landmine. I think it basically does make sense. As for Tyr himself, he has been out for a long time. He's going to need filled in the events of Legion, which obviously saw the Titans return, the defeat of Sargeras and all of that. I don't know if he already knows that or not. It's sometimes kind of hard to tell exactly what a certain character does or does not know in a game like World of Warcraft, where you don't just get a full novel worth of dialogue for absolutely everybody, as much as we would kind of like that. But anyway, look, I think some sort of progenitor discussion probably has to happen. I'm fairly sure that literally the only time the words first ones were used in this expansion is in that document from Odin. And I think that shows that even though a lot of that first onesie stuff actually would have made narrative sense to cover in relation to the Titans in Dragonflight, I think Blizzard very obviously pulled back because that stuff just wasn't really landing with players. And I think they just knew players were a bit sick of it and, well, would have enjoyed the story differently, as I think we ended up doing. Anyway, other than knowing that the Titans exist and that the first ones made them and that Zereth Ordis exists, I basically think that, yeah, Tyr does not know what the Titans' true intent is. I also don't think that Odin knows what the Titans' true intent is. At the end of the day, Odin is basically just, the boss of one planet, and they have had dealings in many planets indeed. Now, per Chris Metzen, in The Last Titan, the expansion that sees us go to Northrend, where Northrend will be revamped and where the Titans will return to Azeroth, he said, we will learn of a vast conspiracy. Now, of course, everything that happens from now on, right, is probably part of Iridikron's plan, where ultimately Iridikron wants to force the return of the Titans and then kick the shit out of them. So obviously he's doing his thing, Xal'atath is doing her thing, and when I think about World of Warcraft Midnight, the expansion after War Within, how it's dealing with Quel'Thalas and all of that, I mean, obviously Ashara has got to be involved, obviously the Naga have got to be involved. I mean, hey, was it not on those very shores that we first saw them, up around Lordaeron, right, in Warcraft 3? Anyway, point is, we've got our work cut out for us. But now we have a full-blown Titan Keeper on our side. Thing is, when you look through his dialogue in this quest, it's continually made clear that he actually needs time to take in and process everything that has happened. And it's really made clear by a final scene that happens in Emir Drasil, where Tyr and Watcher Koranos speak. And Koranos basically says, well, we no longer have a point. In a way, right? They're going to defend the Titan's creation and all, but the threats are kind of dealt with. The dragons got their powers without needing the Titans or a Keeper. The old ones are defeated, right? So Watcher Koranos speaks of basically finding purpose in a world that no longer necessarily needs them, and Tyr's response to that is that he has much to ponder. And that's where Blizzard have left this plotline at this point. Now, if Tyr says he has much to ponder, I think that obviously means that he will stop pondering at some point in the near future. I imagine patch 10.2.5. I mean, obviously it'll be 10.2.5. It could be 10.2.7. Maybe they'll feel that the return to Gilneas, reclaiming all of that, will be all the plot they can fit in 10.2.5. But anyway, the point is we've got 3 more patches left in this expansion. And right now, all we've seen in-game is Tyr reacting to very surface-level details because he's basically just woken up after, 20,000 years or something. So for him to appear and instantly absorb tens of thousands of years of world history would be a little bit silly. Basically, when we see him next, he'll be ready to rock, his pondering will have been done, and he will have actually examined recent history, and that's how the plot will keep on moving forward. And on that, if World of Warcraft is doing what I think it's going to be doing, which is taking a leaf out of FF14's book by having the current expansion's later patch content lead into the story of the next expansion, then I think that we're going to basically be getting an extended storyline that will set up World Soul Saga and take us into the next expansion. Indeed, if you look at the end of the Emir Drasil raid, you see quest dialogue from Thrall and Jaina, who are both beginning to get visions. We've got Khadgar reporting that the Kirin Tor have found something amiss and that he and an old friend are going to investigate the matter. He and an old friend. Who is that? Many people think it's Medivh, just as an example. Clearly then, Blizzard are setting up things to happen over the next year, but before this next expansion comes out. Personally, I wouldn't even be surprised if we met Thrall or Anduin before the next expansion comes out. And then there's also Odin. As I said, Odin and Tyr may not see eye to eye in things. And the last time we met Odin, we kind of met Odin with Viranoth, who, Odin at one point will have very much turbo-hated, because not only was she a dragon, which he, kind of doesn't like, she also was trying to undo Titan stuff, which he really wouldn't like. And we free his storm dragons, who, I know, there's Odin. He hates dragons. He has them anyway. I was just kind of using him for power, right? I wasn't really treating them as the proper beings that they are. I also would say, or think, Odin has his Valajar, Tyr has the Tyr's Guard. I wonder if those groups will throw down. Anyway, it's hard to tell, but I do remember one thing. Blizzard have surprised his force. They've said as much. Now, Taliesin made a post on X where he said he was surprised that follower dungeons were not a BlizzCon reveal, and he wondered what else the team may have in store, to which he then later pointed out in a weekly reset episode, 9 developers, including co-franchise boss Holly Longdale, replied very suspiciously, which again just makes me think, oh, right. In Shadowlands we had some epilogue quests in patch 9.2.5, but then it was nothing other than the Fated season, which was fun but didn't really have any plot or anything like that. Whereas this time we have 3 full patches. Now, here's my take. This may be a cracked take. It may be a cooked take. I don't know if there's another Zoomer term that will describe it. You let me know. But anyway, Season 4 is happening. Blizzard have confirmed that. Now, what if Season 4 is actually part of our narrative? And here's why I think this could happen. 10.2.5 and 10.2.7 will come out in January, and then in March, maybe early April. The final patch of the 3 will be around 2 months after that, if we're of course holding to a patch every 8 or so weeks as our schedule. Now at that point, Season 3 will be 6 months old, and there will be just enough time to do a faster than usual season, Season 4, like they did in Shadowlands. So what if Season 4 comes out with patch 10.2.9? Let's just call it that for talk's sake. And what if that has narrative, as literally every patch of this expansion has had? And what if that narrative is tied into this developing story? What if they try to actually tie that in to what's going on in the Fated season that, of course, still has us going to Mythic Plus dungeons, things like that, right? I mean, to me, it does kind of make sense. Who knows? I mean, after Shadowlands Season 4, the development team did speak in interviews saying that if they were to do a sort of a Fated season, a Season 4, a sort of greatest hits season again, they would do so in a way where there was content relevant to basically people who don't do dungeons and raids. And to me, that sounds like the ideal way to get some storylines and also a Time Rift style feature that is maybe themed around, whatever plot elements lead into our next expansion. Yeah, so it seems to me that yes, the content cadence will not be as blistering as, of course, it was in 2023, at least until, an entire expansion comes out. But actually, up until that, we're going to have 4 patches, 3 more Dragonflight ones, and the pre-patch of the next expansion. And that basically means that where we previously would have had a full content drought, we've actually got a pretty loaded year. Just kind of exciting. That's it for the video. Let me know in those comments what is next for Tyr in your opinion. And with that said, be sure to check out today's sponsor by clicking the link down in the description to let them know I sent you. It's one of the ways where you can actually very directly help the channel. And with that said, I'll see you next time.